You're just an accountant who got lucky, Victoria sneered, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the mahogany conference table. My daughter deserves this more than you ever will. I sat across from my mother-in-law in the same boardroom where I'd spent countless hours building Morgan Industries from a struggling manufacturing company into a $5 million success story. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years of 80-hour weeks, and she still saw me as nothing more than the accountant who married her son. The board has unanimously voted to restructure the company leadership, she continued, sliding a document across the table. Effective immediately, Amanda will be taking over as CFO. Your services are no longer required. Amanda, my sister-in-law, who'd spent the last 3 years posting Instagram photos from her business trips to Monaco and Milan, was now going to be handling the finances I'd painstakingly rebuilt. I felt my lips twitch into a smile. Something funny, Elizabeth? Victoria's eyes narrowed. No, I replied calmly, gathering my belongings. Just remembering something my father taught me about keeping good records. Good luck with everything. My name is Elizabeth Morgan, and at 34, I'd just been ousted from the family business by my mother-in-law. What Victoria didn't know was that I'd seen this coming for months. The whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, the misplaced financial reports, Amanda's sudden interest in attending board meetings. It all pointed to this moment. As I walked to my office to collect my things, I thought about James, my husband, and how he'd been conveniently sent to oversee the Shanghai expansion 2 weeks ago. Victoria had always known how to play her children against each other. We'll handle the transition announcement internally, Victoria called after me. No need to make this more awkward than it needs to be. I turned back, meeting her gaze. Of course, I wouldn't want to make things awkward. My office looked exactly as I'd left it that morning, except for the cardboard box someone had already placed on my desk. 5 years of work, and they expected it to fit in a single box. I opened my laptop one last time, quickly sending an email I drafted weeks ago. The security guard who escorted me out was Tommy, who'd wash my car every night when I worked late reviewing contracts and restructuring debt. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morgan, he whispered as we reached the parking lot. This isn't right. It's okay, Tommy, I said, handing him a business card. Keep in touch. I drove straight to my favorite coffee shop, ordered my usual vanilla latte, and pulled out my phone. 3 calls later, everything was in motion. Victoria thought she was dealing with just an accountant, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. Accountants know where every penny goes, and I've been documenting everything. The next morning, Victoria would receive 3 letters, one from the IRS confirming an audit of Morgan Industries' last 5 years of tax returns, another from the SEC investigating potential securities fraud, and a third from her bank questioning several irregular international transfers I flagged months ago. But that wasn't even the best part. While Victoria had been busy plotting my removal, I've been preparing for my next chapter. The late nights at the office over the past 6 months weren't just about Morgan Industries. I've been building something of my own. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Mom just told me what happened. Are you okay? We need to talk. I stared at the message, thinking about our 10 years of marriage, about how he'd always chosen his mother's side in every conflict, about how he'd conveniently disappeared when Victoria decided to strike. Yes, we do need to talk, I replied. But first, you might want to ask your mother about the Shanghai deal she's been hiding from you. The Shanghai deal, my personal insurance policy. 3 months ago, I discovered Victoria had been quietly selling company assets to a Chinese competitor, pocketing the profits while keeping a board in the dark. I had every email, every transfer, every document carefully preserved and time-stamped. My phone started ringing. Victoria's number. I declined the call and opened my laptop, logging into my private email account. Time to set things in motion. Dear Mr. Chen, I typed. Thank you for your interest in my proposal. I'm now available to discuss the venture in detail. As mentioned, my experience in turning around struggling manufacturing businesses, combined with your distribution network in Asia, could be the beginning of something extraordinary. Victoria thought she was eliminating competition by removing me from Morgan Industries. Instead, she just freed me to become her biggest competitor. I took another sip of my latte, enjoying the quiet of the coffee shop. In less than 24 hours, Victoria would realize exactly what she'd done. She hadn't just fired an accountant, she created her worst nightmare. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. The first of my documented irregularities had already caught someone's attention. A smile spread across my face as I read the subject line. URGEMT, Morgan Industries Financial Audit. It was going to be an interesting month. As I packed up my laptop, I caught my reflection in the coffee shop window. I didn't see the naive accountant who married into the Morgan family 12 years ago. I saw someone stronger, someone who learned to play the long game. Victoria had taught me well, just not in the way she'd intended. She'd shown me that in business you need to be 3 steps ahead. She just never expected me to apply those lessons against her. I headed home to my apartment, another thing Victoria never understood. Why would a successful CFO rent instead of buy? She didn't realize I'd been liquidating my assets for months, preparing for this exact moment. Tomorrow would be day 1 of Victoria's worst nightmare, and I was just getting started. The chaos began exactly as I predicted. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Morgan Industries' legal department was drowning in audit notices. Victoria had already called 17 times, each voicemail more desperate than the last. "Elizabeth, we need to talk," her latest message said, the usual condescension replaced by barely controlled panic. "These auditors are asking questions about transactions I've never seen. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, Victoria, just years of careful documentation." I was already settling into my new office, a modern space in a high-rise across town that I quietly leased 3 months ago. The view of the city skyline was far better than my old office, and the sound of Victoria's empire crumbling was sweeter than any music. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "What did you do?" "Mom's going crazy." I ignored it, focusing instead on the email from Mr. Chen. The merger discussions were progressing perfectly. While Victoria had been sneaking around selling company assets to Chinese competitors, I'd been building relationships with legitimate Asian manufacturers who were eager to partner with someone who understood both markets. James called next. "Liz, please. Whatever's happening, we can fix this. Mom says the auditors are looking at everything. They're talking about fraud investigations." "That's interesting," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Have they looked at the Shanghai documents yet?" Silence. Then, "What Shanghai documents?" "Ask your mother about the factory equipment she's been selling off books. I'm sure she'll have a perfectly reasonable explanation for where that money went." "Liz, wait." I hung up, turning my attention to Tommy, my old security guard, who now sat across from my desk. After Victoria fired me, she'd made the mistake of laying off half the security team. Loyal employees who knew every backdoor dealing they'd witnessed over the years. "They're shredding documents," Tommy reported. "But I've got photos of everything they're trying to destroy. Your mother-in-law's been in her office since 6 a.m., making calls to her private bank in Geneva." I smiled, opening my laptop. "Send the photos to this email address." "And Tommy? Great work." By noon, the story had leaked to the local business press. Morgan Industries, under federal investigation, ran across the bottom of every financial news channel. Victoria's carefully crafted reputation as a business titan was beginning to crack. My phone lit up with another call, this time from David Morgan, my father-in-law. The company founder who'd stepped back 5 years ago, trusting Victoria to manage his legacy. "Elizabeth," his voice was heavy. "What's happening to my company?" "I think you should ask Victoria about that," I replied. "Specifically about how she's been selling off your life's work piece by piece to line her own pockets. The auditors, they're saying there are millions unaccounted for. $3,400,028, I specified. All traceable to accounts in Victoria's name. I have the records if he'd like to see them." Another pause. Yes, I would. 30 minutes later, David Morgan walked into my new office, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I handed him a thick folder, 5 years of documented fraud, asset stripping, and self-dealing, all carefully organized with sticky notes and highlights. "I trusted her," he said quietly, flipping through the pages. "I trusted her with everything. She's been selling off machinery from the Shanghai facility," I explained, pocketing the money while telling the board it was regular maintenance costs. That's just the beginning. David looked up, his eyes sharp. "You kept track of all of this?" "I'm an accountant," I reminded him. "It's what we do." He nodded slowly, then pulled out his phone. "Victoria, board meeting. 1 hour. Everyone needs to be there." I smiled as he left, knowing what was coming. Victoria was about to learn another lesson about underestimating people. At 2 p.m., my phone rang again. A number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Morgan. This is Agent Keene from the SEC. We've reviewed the documentation you provided. We'd like to schedule a formal interview. Perfect timing. I glanced at my computer screen, where a live feed from Tommy showed the chaos unfolding at Morgan Industries. Victoria was pacing the boardroom, her perfect composure finally cracking. Amanda sat in my old chair, looking lost as board members peppered her with questions she couldn't answer. Everything was falling into place exactly as I planned. But this was just the beginning. My new company's paperwork would be finalized tomorrow. While Victoria had been focused on pushing me out, I'd been quietly poaching Morgan Industries' best talent. The employees she'd overlooked, underpaid, and undervalued. They were all about to get better offers. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from James. Just saw the board meeting. It's bad, Liz. Really bad. Can we talk? Please. I stared at the message, thinking about our marriage, about all the times he'd stood silently by while his mother undermined me, about how he'd conveniently been absent when they pushed me out. Yes, I replied. Dinner at Giovanni's, 7 p.m. Bring divorce papers. Victoria had taught me an invaluable lesson. In business, just like in life, you have to be willing to cut ties that hold you back. I was finally putting that lesson to good use. I turned back to my laptop, where an email from Mr. Chen awaited my response. Time to build something new, something entirely mine. Victoria thought she ruined me, but she actually set me free. And this was just the beginning. 1 month later, I stood in front of my new company headquarters, watching as the sign installers finished mounting Phoenix Manufacturing Solutions on the building. The name felt fitting, rising from the ashes of Victoria's attempts to destroy me. The morning news played on my phone. Morgan Industries CEO Victoria Morgan steps down amid fraud investigation. The video showed her leaving the federal building, her designer suit replaced by something far more subdued, her usual confidence shattered. Inside my office, I found a stack of resignation letters from Morgan Industries employees. Victoria's house of cards hadn't just fallen, it had imploded. The company's stock had plummeted 60% since the investigation began, and their biggest clients were already reaching out to me. My phone buzzed with a text from David Morgan. Meeting today, 3 p.m. It's important. I arrived at his private office, not at Morgan Industries, but at his country club exactly on time. He looked tired but resolute. The board wants you back, he said without preamble. As CEO, they've seen what you built in just a month. They know you're the only one who can save the company. I smiled, thinking of Victoria's words. Just an accountant who got lucky. I appreciate the offer, I replied, but I'm not interested in saving Victoria's mess. I'm building something better. David nodded, unsurprised. I thought you'd say that. That's why I have a different proposal. He slid a document across the table. A merger. Equal partnership. Your innovation, our infrastructure. I glanced at the paperwork, then back at him. And Victoria? Gone. Permanently. The SEC has enough to keep her occupied for years. He paused. James signed the divorce papers yesterday, by the way. I stood up, smoothing my skirt. I'll have my lawyers review the proposal. But David, if we do this, we do it my way. No more family politics. He extended his hand. Agreed. As I drove back to my office, I thought about Victoria's face the day she fired me. She thought she was ending my career. Instead, she'd given me the push I needed to surpass her. My phone buzzed one last time. Amanda. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't reply. Some lessons you have to learn the hard way. The accountant she'd underestimated had just become her worst nightmare, and I was just getting started.